Hey, this is Chris, and in this video I'm going to be talking about how you can talk to your kids about what investing is, the very basics of investing. Now, I think before you even get into investing, one of the first concepts that's useful to introduce, regardless of how old your kid is how people earn money. Now, in life, broadly speaking, there's a couple of different ways that people can earn money. You can either give up your time to do something that people value, or you can make things that people value. And I think these are two things that you can talk about in more detail with your kids and give them some examples. For instance, talk to them about someone that might work at a grocery store that gets paid per hour for their time. And so if someone earns $20 an hour and works at a grocery store for 5 hours, you can talk about how much they get paid. Now, for older kids, you might want to talk about the differences between what people get paid working in different areas and why they might be getting paid different amounts. Whether that's because of their experience or the demand for their particular skills. And so talking about how time is valuable and people value their time at different amounts. I remember this was something my dad introduced to me and explained how people working, as a doctor might get paid differently to someone that's working as an electrician, based on how long they had to study for and the amount of work that they needed to do to have the skills to what they're doing, and also the demand for their particular skills. So one way you can make money is from giving up your time. The other way is producing something. The most obvious and easy example to give to kids is if you stand out the front of your house and sell lemonade on the street. Now, if you sell 50 glasses of lemonade at $2 a glass, you can talk about how much money you would earn from selling that lemonade. And you can talk about why people may pay more or less for that lemonade and the sort of factors that influence what people pay for stuff. Now, if your kids are a little bit older, you can also start to introduce the concept of costs. That when you're selling things, not only is the amount you're making from selling the thing important, but also the cost of what you're paying for the raw ingredients. So using that lemonade example, you could explain that if the cost of the lemonade was $1 a glass and you were selling it for $2 a glass, how much you would make per glass and therefore how many glasses you would need to sell. I think it's really important to explain to kids, these differences early on, so they can start to grasp, just how people make money. I remember something my dad introduced pretty early was explaining to me that people that sell their services based on time are always limited by how much money they can make based on the amount of time in a day. Because regardless of how skillful you are, you could be the smartest, rocket scientist in the world or brain surgeon, but ultimately there's only so many hours in the day that you can actually provide your skills for. Whereas people that sell stuff are almost unlimited in how much money they can make, because as long as there's demand for the stuff, they can keep on producing more and more and more. And I remember as a kid, this really, I thought was a fascinating concept, that even the people that I thought were the smartest people out there may not be the people that make the most money, because they can't actually sell more and more and more, and that they're limited by their time. So once your kids have some sort of understanding about how people make money and understand that it doesn't just sit on your phone and come out of thin air, that you can spend it on whatever they want, the next concept I think you can start to introduce is saving and investing and the choices you have with that money that you make. And now the obvious choice that I think a lot of kids know about is spending. So the first thing you can do with money once you make it is actually use it immediately to buy things that you might need, like a house or like food, or things that you might want. Spending is one way to use money, but ultimately, I think the thing that you want to be teaching kids earlier on is that there is another choice. If you don't use that money immediately to buy things, you can actually stash it away for the future to buy things later on. And this is a concept that starts to introduce saving and investing. Now, the most simple and first concept I think to introduce is saving, that you can actually put your money in a bank that's safe, and they will use that money while you don't need it, and they will give you more money in the future in the form of interest. And I think even without introducing the idea of a bank, you can create this concept at home by asking your kids, if there's a toy that they don't want or they don't need to use over the next few days, that you can borrow and hold on to for those days. And while you're borrowing it, you'll pay them an amount. Now that doesn't have to be in money. It could be in a candy, or it could be in stickers or something else that they value. But ultimately introducing that if you don't need to use something, you can actually lend it to someone else and they will pay you to hold on to it or borrow it for a period of time. And I think that's probably one of the easiest ways to introduce the idea of saving. So after your kids have some sort of idea of what saving is, that you can leave your money somewhere or leave something that you don't need and you will get some extra return from it, and you can use toys as an example, or you can use money. You can take $5 that your kid has saved up and said, look, if you don't need that money right now, I'll give you $6 next week. The next concept to talk about is investing. Now, I remember the way that my dad explained investing to me originally was that if there's money that you don't need straight away, there are businesses out there that actually need that money in order to grow or to build more services or goods for people, and they will actually pay you a return for using that money to build their business. And so, I think one of the most simple examples that I remember as a kid was that my dad walked me into Woolworths, and sat me down in front of the milk fridge and said, look at all these people sort of buying milk. Now, if you buy shares in Woolworths or invest in Woolworths, what you're doing is you're giving Woolworths the ability to go and pay the farmers for that milk. And then when they sell that milk, they're going to make some profit and they can share that profit with you. And so he said, look, watch all the people that buy milk from the milk fridge over the next 10 minutes and count them, and imagine that every time they sell that milk, Woolworths is making 50 cents. And of that 50 cents, because you have given Woolworths some money, you get 5 cents of that. And so I would sit there and calculate all the people that were buying milk from the milk fridge and work out that if I had given Woolworths some money, how much of that money would be mine, how much of that profit I would be able to share in. And I think that was one of the first kind of concepts that made me excited about owning shares or investing in companies, because I started to dream about all the companies out there that you could give money to and then share some of their profits in. And so the next step, I think, is then introducing your kids to all the sorts of companies out there that they can ultimately give some money to and then share in the profits of, and asking them, what are the sorts of businesses out there that you think people want the services or goods from? And you can talk about this just walking around in the street. Talk about car businesses or businesses producing other things, telephones, or other things that the kids see and use every day that people might want to buy. And this is a great way of introducing the idea of giving them the opportunity to buy their very first share.